Hello, colleagues. We are here to discuss topics for the Select Committee on Tribal Relations. Madam Chair, we had submitted a few, or there's an online portal where anyone can submit proposed topics. And so we received a few submissions. We have people in the audience who I think want to bring some ideas. And then, Madam Chair, because we were a little light on some topics, LSO did provide us a list of prior year requests. And then I also had emailed my co-chair a few ideas, but this is very informal. We can kind of tackle and discuss issues we want to take on. So with that, I think we'll start with the online submission that we received. One was through Representative Penn. So Representative Penn, if you wanted to walk us through your submission.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So this topic, if you remember, at our last Tribal Relations Committee, right at the end, we had some public comment by a few tribal members that were had some concerns about the DSF program and how it's working. And during the interim, I've had the ability to meet with them and others and try to kind of investigate some things and see where we're at. And so as a committee, obviously, we want to make sure we're cognizant of what our role is here. But I just was thinking, given our recent ICWA codification in Wyoming, it seems reasonable to me that we get a better understanding of the tribal state DFS relationship because it's somewhat complex. The contracts are complex, and just kind of an attempt to gain an idea, an understanding of the history there, and an education on how is that relationship supposed to work, and just then to make sure, are we doing, as a state, are we doing what we are expected to do, and making sure the roles are where they need to be. So you do see a statement. One of the constituents that I've been working with thought that we would be having this in Fort Washakie, so he's prepared to speak. And then when he found out it was here, I said, just print it up and I'll distribute it to committee members so you can read there. But if we can just kind of maybe have an opportunity to learn from our state DFS and maybe talk with representatives of tribal DFS and just learn more about that relationship.
Thank you. Comments or questions from other committee members? Seeing none, we'll, and so how this usually goes, chairmen receive the requests and then we kind of sort out the volume and just what we think we can get done through the interim. We usually have two-day meetings or day-and-a-half meetings. So we're just, I think today, going to take the list and then my co-chair and I will discuss and draft a letter that we'll submit to Management Council. Thank you for that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? We also have, I think what we'll do is have anybody in the audience who wants to testify come provide their ideas, and then we can maybe individually as legislators, if you wanted to offer suggested topics, we'll go that route if that's okay with everyone. Okay, seeing no objection to that, how about we start with the governor's office? Is there anything that you would like to present to us?
Chair Ellis, Kiewantland Tribal Relations Policy Advisor, Special Counsel to Governor Mark Gordon. We also have Anita Roman, James Sorrells on virtually. We had to kind of pick logistically how we could get them here, which weeks in the session, but they are here attending. In terms of a specific topic requested by the governor's office, we don't have a specific formal topic for request. Happy to collaborate and provide feedback, though, based on kind of the ideas that come out of the council today.
Okay, maybe we'll let James and Anita in if they're ready to testify. Turn on your mics and turn on your cameras. All righty. Do we have either of you on? Looks like James. We'll start with you. Welcome. We'll start with James and then Anita. And your microphone's not on. James, we can't hear you. James?
Okay, all right, here we are.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm Chairman Honorable Committee, I'm James Sarles, Tribal Liaison to the Eastern Shoshone Tribe. This came up rather quickly, really didn't have a lot, a lot of time to look it over. I met with our business council yesterday, and I did forward them the email, chatted with them a little bit. They had, all they mentioned is taxes going to be on there. That's pretty much all I can. That's all I can say is, if it's going to be on there again. So that could be, it could be a positive one that they would like to visit again. As far as bringing it forward, I don't know if I can do that. But I see where that's might be one of the topics. So that would be good. Again, the sanitation is another one as well. Another area. Of course, we're always interested in education, the K through 12, as well as the law enforcement. We have this, Anita's been working on this Badges Act for a bit, so I think that one, that's federal thing, so we'll let them sort that one out. I mean, their red tape only goes so fast. But yeah, I'll stand, that's all I had. About any questions?
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Sorrells, Madam Co-Chair?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Sorrells. So I just want a little, discussion, clarification. The first one you mentioned were taxes, which of course we discussed at length in the last interim. And so my understanding, and I guess this it's kind of key because we did spend a lot of time on it, is whether there's interest in going further, in taking a next step. It seems like some of the discussion I've heard is, we had a good discussion. A lot was learned, but the tribes aren't interested, or one or the other, in actually going to the next step and creating legislation from that. So if you have any idea or thoughts from the Eastern Shoshone Tribe as far as whether there's the appetite to take a next step and for us to spend more time to try to bring legislation. So that's one question, Mr. Sorrells.
Okay, so Madam Chair, Representative Oakley, as you may know, that the joint business councils have elected to give that authority to the Wind River Tax Commission. So as far as them creating an MOU between the tribes and the state, I don't know where they're at on that. I couldn't answer that at this moment. Can probably certainly find out though in the next week or so, but I do not know where they're at on the taxes.
Madam Chair, I think for the purposes of our discussion today, we've spent a lot of time working on it. I think it'd be appropriate to just continue it on as a request, and we can talk about it more as the year goes on. Certainly no commitment one way or another on any of the bills that we've looked at. So thank you, Mr. Sorrells. Anything else?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Roman?
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Ellis and committee. Good to see you. By the way, just a heads up, I have 2 kids with influenza, so I'm going to just make it really quick. I see that Travis McNiven, the lobbyist for the Northern Arapaho Business Council, is in the room, and so he'll have more to add. But I did have some discussions, which I've tried to keep everybody in the heads up on, is as I understand, they would be open to discussions regarding tuition waivers at the University of Wyoming. But again, I'm not going to say that that's, I don't have that in writing. What I do have in writing is they're certainly open to discussions around legislation on illegal dumping and solid waste issues around the reservation. so homelessness and houselessness came up as a verbal discussion. And then as we continued to talk about it today, so I just met with them at 11, they were talking about how it was a public health issue. And so if it's not a topic that the select tribal does tackle, they definitely want to be, they want to participate in any discussions at any of the state level as well, like if other committees take it on, because they understand that it's a public health issue. So that's what I want to say, where I'm not speaking directly for the council since, but I've been communicating with them. As for taxes, again, they had voted on giving the authority to the Wind River Tax Commission, as James mentioned, to talk with, so that tax commission is allowed to talk to the state tax commission about what an MOU would look like, and then they will bring it back to the councils and discuss from there what that would look like. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Roman? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony today. Is there anyone in the audience who wanted to present ideas? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Travis, I'm sorry. Move quicker. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Welcome, Travis.
Thank you, Chairwoman. So my name is Travis McNiven here on behalf of the Northern Arapaho Business Council. Do have a little bit to add to the discussion for the committee's consideration. Following up from last year, as you all know, the committee took a fairly broad approach in looking at education, K through 12 and other education-related topics. One of the ideas from the Northern Arapaho was to look more specifically or narrowed at a tuition waiver for the University of Wyoming for residents. I did share with the committee and hope you all have a few examples of Maine, Michigan, and Arizona of what some other states have done in this space. They have done different ways of looking at it. All tribes, resident tribes, various amounts of tuition, et cetera. But I did want to share that as a potential topic for the committee's consideration. The other issue, again, recognizing that it is much broader than this committee, is the housing topic. Housing, houselessness, just challenges. As many of you know, Wyoming continues to have this growing problem just statewide, but specifically within Fremont County, the prices of homes and the availability in Lander is really been going up. We've had this entire discussion within the legislature on property taxes and such, and that certainly stems from that to a somewhat lesser degree, but still the case in Riverton. And then, as you all know, on the reservation, just lack of housing with the housing, is challenging with the limited number of people in homes, et cetera. We saw that as certainly a contributing factor during COVID with just a number of people within a particular dwelling. So that continues to be an issue, again, recognizing much broader than this committee, but as it relates to Fremont County or any housing discussions that any of you are aware of, within the larger legislative context that are, looking at this, Fremont County certainly has some housing limitations. And so anything that could be done to either nibble on the edges of that or the margins or whatever it is would be greatly appreciated. The final thing that I would mention, again, following up from last year, the idea was raised to have some sort of cultural day or something along those lines that would be obviously for the members of the committee, but an invitation could be extended to just your colleagues in the House and the Senate as some sort of cultural resource or education or event of some type. if that is of interest, or it is judged a good value, use of time for the committee or your colleagues, that is still something that the council would, welcome planning or discussing further.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. McNiven? Madam Co-Chair?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So I've got several questions for you. Thank you, Mr. McNiven. One that you didn't hit, so I just want to, I guess, ensure that the Northern Arapaho is interested in, because I tend to think this might be one that we really take up. The solid waste illegal dumping, is that something that's of interest to the Northern Arapaho?
Mr. McNiven?
Thank you, Chairman and Co-Chair. My understanding is that continues to be a serious issue, yes. I do know that there continues to be discussions with the county, the two tribes respectively, and so forth. And where that, where those are at, right now, I don't know. But the cleanup issues, the illegal dumping from tribal and non-tribal folks, yes, certainly still a very fundamental issue.
Follow-up?
Thank you. I appreciate that. So check, I'm good there. The next question I have for you, I'm hearing a lot of interest in this topic, and we've heard it from the liaisons, you, the governor's office, so it seems like a big possibility that we take this on. But is the homelessness or houselessness, I guess, is getting to be the term. But my question for you, not to put you on the hot seat, but for discussion, is what, as this committee, as representatives of the state, do you see, what role of the state? When I look at what issues would we be tackling? So if we're setting up our meeting, for instance, what players are we calling to the table to, be witnesses and have this discussion, and in the end, attempting to help or solve a problem?
Mr. McNiven?
Thank you, and the seat did warm up a little bit, for sure. It's a great question. It's a fair question. I think one of the questions would be, from a statewide, we know that there has been different, how do we get more affordable housing? I think that's a question that different communities around the state are asking. Perhaps there is a way to look at, what's going on in other areas of the state, if there are things that are working or are not working. And then each of the two tribal governments, they have a housing authority. And, is there overlap somehow as it relates to the funding that they could, access? Other people, players, stakeholders in that space in Wyoming, but then also that kind of dovetails a little bit into worker shortage as well, which is also a statewide issue, as far as some of that. Of course, last year and then previous year, supply chain was part of construction limitations and timelines as well. Not a good answer, I fully realize, but my best at trying to think about what role this committee could have in either getting folks together, having a discussion, et cetera.
Follow-up?
So thank you. This one should be easier. I hope, Mr. McNiven. I guess it's just kind of to discuss. I thought you had mentioned the cultural resources, and I mentioned that we had talked about it before, which we did. And then we kind of tried to, I think, have it at this, the last day was the day of one of the tribes' powwow, but didn't really come together. So I was wondering what you think about this idea. What if we actually took cultural resources on as a topic, and then so we're digging into something maybe more specific, and then dovetail it into that idea of having maybe a legislative event?
Mr. McNiven?
Chair and co-chair, thank you. Yes, I think, in my time and spending with the council members, they recognize that education and understanding is always that more can be done. Both, there's a lot of residents, in the state, officials, newly elected officials, come and go from the legislative body. There's always a need to explain how, sovereignty, government to government, different cultures, look at things, do things. And so from that vein, I think the council would welcome, any sort of additional work in that direction that would provide educational and cultural opportunities for Wyoming's leaders.
Thank you. Anything else? Representative Chestik?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you, Mr. McNiven, for being here. And take this as me thinking out loud a little bit, which is always dangerous. But your conversation about housing challenges and homelessness raised some memories in my mind of several of us. About half the committee here is on the Judiciary Committee as well. And when we had our interims last summer on Judiciary, we heard from several people in Casper about a homelessness problem that may have been tied to the reservation as well. And that is, there were people showing up in Casper, probably involuntarily being brought there by who knows who brought them there. And where did they come from? Did they come from the reservation? Did they come from Montana? A lot of uncertainty, but there was a growing problem in Casper about a homeless population that was just appearing, and nobody knew how that happened. So I'm wondering, it may be outside the realm of this committee, and we might not want to take it on, but is there some role that we might have in fact-finding to find out what happened, and is it still happening? Is there anything we can do to stop that kind of stuff from happening? And I'm just, again, thinking out loud, is that something that maybe we could bring up and dig into a little bit more during the interim?
Mr. McNiven?
Thank you, Chairwoman and Representative Chesik. I do recall reading some of the articles referencing what you were mentioning about. I don't know much more than what was explained in those articles. And I would certainly just defer back to the judgment of this committee if that's something that you would like to, as you say, dig into.
Additional questions? Representative Chestik?
Yeah, and that's interesting to me that you're not aware of the problem from your side, so maybe it is somebody coming in from Montana. I don't know, but again, it's something we need to take into consideration. But the fact that you don't know about the problem might be an indication that it's not happening from the reservation, might be coming from some other source. My other question was about the tuition waivers, which to me is something that, tell me what has been going on, what conversations have been happening between you and the university about those kinds of things, because it seems like the university would be the first point of contact for that kind of a program. So help me understand what's going on right now. And is there anything that this committee can do to facilitate those conversations, or should we just step back and let you guys talk to the university?
Mr. McNiven?
Thank you, Chairwoman and Representative Chesik. My understanding is that, in fact, the Northern Arapaho Council, particularly a few of the members on that council who have, a very strong interest in this, have had discussions with the university and with the Board of Trustees. To what extent and to what level those discussions have taken place, I couldn't, I wasn't part of those and couldn't answer that. I do know that they did happen. I do know that one of the things that was expressed by the university was this was, from a money perspective, a legislature ask or issue, which, yes and no, right? So certainly, but certainly a valid point that, there is a potential role for the legislature, was some of the feedback that the tribal council did receive back from the university. I do know there is some continued plans for future discussions along those lines. I also know that the council, did want and ask me to bring it up, here today for the committee to consider.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. McNiven? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time. Does anyone else in the audience
Thank
want to
you.
testify on potential topics? And I'll just then ask my colleagues. Representative Chestick, did you want to offer some topics? Okay, Representative Penn, did you have anything additional?
Just the one that I have, Madam Co-Chair, and I do support the idea of the illegal dumping. I brought a bill this session after working with the tribes on that particular issue, and so I do know that it's a definite need there, and so I might be supportive of that.
Thank you. And just so you know, I made a very informal list that I shared with my co-chair and staff, just so we'd have some things to talk about. I saw that you did bring an illegal dumping or a bill related to that. And then just to acknowledge, Senator Case has worked on this issue a lot. We've had Region 8 representatives come out. Looking at the turnover we've had on this committee, Senator Case, if you wanted to pick that up again, my jaw was on the floor when I saw the problem out there, and I don't feel like we've really moved the needle too much. But I know you've done a ton of work on that, so if you wanted to pick it up again, I just thank you for your leadership on that for over the years. We'll go to Senator Case. Is there anything you want to add to the discussion?
Well, Madam Chairwoman, I hope we wouldn't lock ourselves in too tight overall. Retain a little flexibility between the co-chairs to address things as we go forward. And, certainly infrastructure, transportation, law enforcement, solid waste are all perennial topics that we've advanced. When we say it's a perennial topic, it doesn't mean we haven't advanced the needle considerably in all of those areas. The Department of Family Services issue is intriguing. There's a lot of history there as well that goes back a very, very long time, and it's probably useful to have a review of that and see where we've ended up. Education remains a perennial topic. We strive for improvement and jointly with our friends on the reservation. So I would hope we wouldn't be overly limiting. We only have 2 meetings, right? Probably, we could probably ask for more, but I would hope we would ask for 2 full day meetings. And it's always nice in our meetings to have a touch with the area and the culture as part of it, either, in the night before, the night of, or a separate tour, some things. But I think that's an important thing. This is more about relationships than it is about legislation in a way. And I hope we would go down that road. I appreciate your leadership, Madam Chairwoman, and yours as well.
Thank you. And Senator Case is right. Like, we were doing a lot on illegal dumping, then we just kind of took a break from working on it, but it's time to pick up because we have made some progress with our friends at the EPA, and along those lines with law enforcement, we're always looking at making sure we've got parity in the force, because that's what we need.
Yeah.
And there are unique issues about that. So,
And Madam Chairwoman, illegal dumping doesn't exactly describe it. There is, I think people like to say that and then blame everybody, but there's a relationship between tribal governments and the county government with respect to solid waste management. And it is, there's charges and expenses. So it is a difficult arrangement sometimes for people on the Wind River Reservation. So illegal doesn't exactly describe it. You can't, that sounds like anybody that makes this happen, we want to lock them up. And it's actually a bigger social and bigger picture than that. I'd prefer a different term. I don't know what it is, but solid waste issues is always
solid waste
a little bit
management.
more vague and appropriate.
No, I like solid waste management. Thank you for that. Senator Barlow? Okay, and then Madam Co-Chair, and then I can go through the list that I sent to you, but did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So good discussion. I certainly hear 3 to 5 topics that everybody is interested in. I would say it sounded like from the tribes to the people in this room to the people on the committee that hopefully we can do some good work on. So I definitely think we're hearing the solid waste management. Really appreciate the comments from the good senator from Fremont County on not, just giving it a name that's possibly pejorative and not helpful. So I agree with that. I also, we've discussed the cultural resource protection is how Madam Co-Chair wrote that in an email, and I really like that. And I think all of this, and then we also heard from the tribes, from Senator Case, that education and relationships on culture is a part of what we're doing here. It's called tribal relations, right? So I really like that, and I know you'll talk about that probably, and you came up with a good one. I think that we could really maybe bring some other people in, have good discussions, show interest and learn about the culture on the reservation. So I just really like that direction. And again, as Senator Kay said, it's important. It's not just, it's not like a waste of taxpayer money. It's us relating with the tribes, and I think that's important. And then I am interested in the tuition waiver discussion. I know that's of interest to the tribes. So under the topic of education, if you will, that's specifically an interest. And then I guess finally, again, to appreciate what Senator Case said, the kind of the idea of flexibility. And I know the co-chair, Madam Co-Chair, and I worked on that last year with staff, and we'll try to do that again. We've got just amazing staff on this committee, kind of fight the constraints of management council or whatever, if we need to make sure that we've got the flexibility, and we'll certainly try to continue to do that. So I think we've done a real good outline here today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So the list I put together, and these are just issues that I've been following and continue to have an interest in, is obviously the sales tax collection, a continuation of that conversation. Public safety is always on the list, but I think getting an update from the Missing Murdered Indigenous Person Task Force, I know they're continuing to do good work, and we're getting a lot of attention from the FBI and getting more help, and I think that's needed. So just keeping those lines of communication open. Years ago, we also toured the tribal court and looked at the law enforcement facilities that are available on the reservation. Those are all things that we could look at again. Solid waste management, tribal housing has been covered, a continuation of our conversation about education, looking at the YTOP proficiency scores. One thing that was brought to our attention at our last hearing was things that the Department of Education is doing, maybe focusing on more ACT prep to get those kids, better access to the Hathaway Scholarship. So keeping that in the front of our mind. But additional ideas I had, years ago, we had an update on from YDOT on the quality of tribal roads. I think we're always concerned when we see articles about hit and runs or fatalities on tribal roads. So that might make the list if there's an interest in that particular topic. I was also reading an article about cultural resource protection. I think on the reservation, there are sites that have petroglyphs. I know there are federal sites on BLM lands that have petroglyphs. And it just kind of got me thinking, are we as a state doing enough to, provide support in protecting those sites? So that would be a topic, is just cultural resource, understanding what's out there, not just of our tribes, but of other more, ancient tribes that occupied this area. And then the last thing, if there's an interest, we talk a lot about gaming in Wyoming and our gaming commission. And if it's of interest to the committee, we could ask of the Northern Arapahoe's Gaming Commission or Eastern Shoshone's Gaming Commission, their regulators, would just do a 101 for us so we can see what they do, how they manage their casinos, just so we start learning how this area is regulated in other ways. So if there's an interest in that, certainly that's an ask. We can't compel anyone to do that. And I want to be very respectful that I'm aware we can't make anyone do that. But certainly if there's an interest, we could ask if that's of interest to the committee. So those were some of the topics I came up with, and just welcome any feedback or if you like those ideas. Okay. For the record, people shaking their heads. So, all righty. Well, I think we've got
Shaking and nodding are two different
shaking,
things.
nodding, a lot of nodding, happy nodding. So with that, I think we've got, Madam Co-Chair, a good list. We can work with LSO to put this into an appropriate letter for Management Council's review. And If anyone between now and when we submit that letter have any thoughts or feedback, please reach out to us. So with that, I think we'll end this meeting. Thanks so much. Meeting's adjourned.
Madam Chair, we were wondering if we could also discuss next meeting time.
Dear committee members, I'm so sorry. We have a date in May on the calendar. My husband had work travel that has come up, and so we're trying to find a new time so that I can be there. And we're working on that, and we don't have a new proposed date, but that's up in the air, just as an FYI.
I'm sorry, I was talking to the co-chair.
Yeah,
She threw me off.
we might need to move our May meeting date to accommodate my schedule, and I'm sorry. It's just, we had to turn them in so early and I had something come up, so.